Weekly migration. What is it? But more importantly, how do we actually do it? At a first glance, migration really just looks like task transfer, but it's actually a bit more than that. Migration is the process we use to consider what is worth our time and energy, or what is worth us paying attention to. In general, we only want to transfer tasks if they matter, and that holds for weekly migration too. Weekly bullet journal migration is part of the weekly reflection process, and it's the part where we consider what we're moving into our next week, and where any of our other open entries from the current week need to go. That's the what. Let's look at the how. How do we actually do weekly migration? Well, weekly migration has two main parts, the first of which is reviewing or reflecting on our open entries, and the second being transferring entries where they need to go. Here we have an example weekly log, and you can see that come the end of the week, we still have entries that have been left unaddressed. They haven't been started, or they haven't been finished. In reviewing these entries, we want to ask ourselves some questions to see if we actually should transfer these somewhere else. This is what we call the migration filter. So for each open task, asking 1, is this vital? 2, does this matter? And 3, are there any consequences for not doing this task? If the answer is no to all of those, then the entry can get scrapped. It was just a distraction. It doesn't really serve us. It's not taking us where we want to go. Writer suggests that we fully cross out the entry. I don't really like the look of that though, so I usually just put a horizontal line through the bullet for the entry. We really just need some way to denote that this entry has been addressed, and in this case, we're not keeping it. For any entry that has answered yes to one of our migration filter questions though, that is going to be something that we transfer. But before we do the transferring, we want to make sure that we've gone through all of the open entries and considered whether they're going to be transferred. This is effectively a form of task batching, so reviewing all of the open entries first, and then moving the ones that actually matter. The more you do this process, the more second nature it'll become. It can take a little bit of getting used to asking each of these questions for all of your open tasks, but the more we do it, the easier it becomes to spot those distractions and get rid of them. Once our distraction spotting process is finished though, it's time to transfer what's left. Transferring entries involves rewriting them in other places, whether that be in this journal, in another journal if you keep multiple, or just taking those open entries and putting them where they best belong. We have 4 main options when it comes to transferring entries during weekly migration. So we could be moving it to the next weekly log, we could be moving it to the monthly log, moving it into our future log, or moving it into another collection. We do want to be mindful about where we're moving these entries though. It can be very tempting just to move them all into the next week, but if you're not actually going to action them next week, then that's not the best course of action. We should really only be moving entries into our next weekly log if we intend to action them during that week. They can move into the monthly log, either onto the monthly log's timeline if it's happening on a specific day, or into the monthly log's task list if it's just something we want to action during the month. Entries that are time specific but fall outside of our current month can be put in the future log, and then the remaining entries may best belong in other collections. For instance, the entry of gaming spreads list that I have here would better belong in a collection that lists layouts that I want to make in my journal. If you had a book title written on your list, maybe that could be moved to a to be read layout, that kind of thing. As you transfer those open entries though, we denote that by changing the dot bullet to show that this task has been moved. In the bullet journal method, the less than and greater than symbols are used. So less than for a task that's been scheduled or moved to the future log, and the greater than symbol for migrated or moved to somewhere else. I personally use a little arrow for both of them, but it's really just about having a symbol that you can quickly draw in and that you know denotes that that entry has been moved. But we just go through each of those open entries and move them to where they need to go. After a few weekly migrations though, it may be time for a monthly bullet journal migration. The process of that one is a little bit different, but it's another opportunity to just check in with our journals and make sure that our journaling practice is aligned with the journal's purpose. That one's worth a watch, so click or tap on that one and I will see you over there.